Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the show. I am so glad you're tuning in today because we have a very special episode. January is Human Trafficking Awareness Month, and we're in Florida, so we are number 3. So that's
Yeah.
definitely a concern for us. And joining me today is a good friend of mine. His name is James Billig. He is founder of Blue Line, and he's going to get into that in a little bit. But he's also the Chief Compliance Officer and Law Enforcement Liaison for UACT. UACT is non-for-profit organization. It's United Against Child Trafficking. That's the actual name of the organization. And I will go ahead and let James introduce himself. Take it away.
Good morning. Thanks for having me, Crystal. Really appreciate it. Like Crystal said, yes, I am the Chief Compliance Officer now for United Against Child Trafficking. I've got about 37 years now in the law enforcement and threat mitigation businesses. The last 12 years, I've really been concentrated on active shooter mitigation. I developed a active shooter alert system that directly informs law enforcement, and we've implemented that system and the balance and training throughout Florida and Georgia over the past decade. And it's been kind of a paradigm shift for me, moving towards from the active shooter world to the child threat mitigation world when it comes to trafficking and sex crimes. It's funny how life comes full circle. I was a detective and did have a bad case back in 2004 where a girl was lured off the internet and brought to Miami, and the case was exhausting. We made over 15 arrests and we got our girl back alive. Thank God. I didn't think there was a chance we were going to, but we did. And it's funny how these things kind of come full circle, and now I'm really doing this full time. I started working with this, volunteering my time with UACT with a very good friend of mine, Lynn Barletta, who started this about 10 years ago. The Attorney General gave her the Community Safety Award 2 years ago for all of her efforts. And locally here in the Martin County area, she has great support by our elected officials. So I came on volunteering for her, and then it just rolled into all the stars kind of aligned, and I came on full time as her chief compliance officer as we are attempting to build this out nationwide right now with an app development, a real-time information pusher to law enforcement, and also law enforcement training, which is we begin this program actually next week. I'll start training Stewart Police Department as my pilot location. So that's really where I am right now. It's just been a life dedicated to trying to mitigate threat and prepare people for the different things that are out there, and how to avoid them by using time and distance. It's just really everything. It's going back to
Right.
just time and distance and to try and mitigate any threat.
Yeah. The first question I have for you is there are so many myths about trafficking and how it happens. Often people think of taking of force by abduction. In your work with law enforcement and working with UACT, what is the actual reality? How are these traffickers getting access to our children today?
Well, people have a difficult time even defining it. When we say human trafficking, people are thinking about, minors coming across the border and coming to the United States. They didn't understand there's a difference between human trafficking, and child exploitation. Human trafficking is something that is labor related, that is bringing across people who are 18 and older in the United States to, let's say, work in massage parlors, to work in controlled environments for working in strip clubs, things of that nature. Child trafficking is entirely different. That is either the use of children through economic reasons, which organized crime utilizes, or through your typical, the best way classifying is through pedophiles, people who take children for their own sexual gratification. Excuse me. And they are typically lured from the internet. I'll probably say this 10 times today. If you have a child who is under the age of 18 that has access to the internet or to a cell phone or any electronic device to the outside world, you need to sit them down and have a conversation with them of exactly what threats there are that are out there, and that it will happen to them at some point in time. I have yet to find anybody who plays any games like Roblox, Minecraft, Grand Theft Auto, who are in chat rooms like Discord, Snapchat, who have not been approached by somebody. I've yet to find a kid who I've actually sat down and talked to and said, well, yeah, that happened to me too. So these are the way that these are the types of suspects that we have out there who are doing this, either it be organized or it be just pedophilia. And typically it's through electronic devices. The white van pulling up and snatching the kid. Those things are actually happening. They do happen mostly at gas stations, but that's not our highest level of probability. Now, I will give this disclaimer. Since we've closed the border down, in my meetings with Homeland Security, I just had one the other day speaking with them, we have started to see an uptick in domestic kidnappings because there is a demand in our country. Like you mentioned earlier, we're number one in the nation. Florida ranks number three for reported crimes. There's a massive demand for young girls and a massive uptick in a demand for young boys, to where that demand is still there, but we're not getting thousands of illegals across the border, so they have to find these people somewhere. So that's there are two main forms of methods and the two types of criminals that we have out there.
How does a predator move to a child from a simple conversation to a point of control and exploitation?
So anything that's done online is through manipulation, and it can be done by a human being or it can be done by chatbots. We have, you know, on our website, we talk about these things. There's actual rooms full of cell phones that are connecting with minors just thousands of times a minute, more than their brain can obviously keep up with trying to connect with them. And how they do it is through typical manipulation, through grooming. And the grooming process is befriending someone. So you could have a chatbot talking to a 12-year-old who's playing Roblox or playing Fortnite, that they're just online playing with other, they think are other kids, and they're having discussions with them and they're playing the game with them. They could play the game with them for 2 years and be pushed off into what we call a vault or a condo. And it's, hey, private chat. They go into this private chat, they flip them over to a Discord chat room, which people who don't understand what Discord is, it works the same ways as Snapchat. You're having conversations, but the conversations are disappearing as they take place. And it's a great way for a deviant to work because it doesn't leave that forensic footprint for law enforcement. So they'll get him into that room and start grooming them and befriend them. But you find the pain. Hey, I'm playing Fortnite at 11 o'clock. How are you able to do that? Oh, I'm sneaking and I'm playing it myself. My parents are the same way. Yeah, I can't stand my parents. Me either. And that's how it starts. It's just that simple. That kids have a very difficult time when I ask them, "Do me a favor, define what a friend is." Like, well, I got thousands of friends online. Yet they could be a recluse who sits in their rooms and they have no physical friends. And my question is always, has that friend ever come to your home, sat in your kitchen with your parents? Well, no, I've never physically met them. Well, then they're not your friend at all. So that is a
Right.
very common problem that we have, that they're not even able to define their friends. Once they get them into that room, they'll start whatever their intention is. If their intention is to exploit them and sextort them, which has become extremely popular, they'll start talking about their bodies, and maybe they'll be talking to what they believe is another 14-year-old boy or 12-year-old boy, and they'll say, "Hey, look at my muscles," and they'll take a picture of their muscles, and then they'll say, "Show me yours," and then it will progress. Then they'll say, "Well, take a picture of your crotch," and then they get the
Right.
innocent 14-year-old doing the same thing, and then they'll turn on him right then and there and say, "Yeah, I want $500 Zoom, or I'm sorry, Zelle to me right now, or I'm going to tell your parents." And they're very good at. It's very easy nowadays. Once you have someone's real identity, to find out really where they live, who their parents are, and they can start naming names. Say, "No, I'm going to tell John and Jane that you sent this picture. I'm going to send it to them unless you send me $500." And that's how they start sextorting these kids
Mhm.
and getting money out of them. And so, in sad cases, and it's becoming more common, these kids end up killing themselves because of it. We just saw this
Yeah,
in West
I was
Virginia.
just gonna mention that because there's so many incidents where young people have taken their own lives because they felt like there was no other option. Absolutely
Yeah.
heartbreaking, and they're exploiting these children, and many children just they don't know any better.
Now, and the key to that case was horrible because these wonderful parents have watched their interview. They were on top of this child. He was into athletics, played two sports. He was a great student. It took just a matter of a couple of hours for him to go from having a simple chat to taking a gun and shooting himself.
Right.
His parents never had a chance.
Yeah,
That's why it's important to tell your kids that it's going to happen to you, and that's okay to come to them if it does happen. We'll put in it,
right.
we'll do what we can to get them into it, but don't be scared to come to us, because it's going to happen to them. People have to realize that if their child is online, it's going to happen to them at some point in time.
Yeah. Can you tell us what some of the signs are that a parent could look for in their children if they suspect that they're being groomed or maybe even trafficked?
Yeah, you're going to see definitely a change in behavior. The more recluse your child is, the greater the likelihood is that they're going to gravitate towards these groups. I know we're going to touch on 764 in a little bit, but you have either an automated AI chatbot who's speaking to this child, but the worst case scenario, you have a group of minors who are like-minded, deviant teenagers who are talking these kids into doing things. First, they befriend them, become a group, and then they turn on them. And the signs that you have would be that becoming more recluse, more time on their phone, being very secretive about things, maybe their hygiene changes a little bit, because what ends up happening is their self-esteem gets built up first and then it crashes because they're forcing these kids to do horrible things. So you may see their hair being cut in strange places. They force them to cut and eat their hair. These, these are the types of things that you might see. Maybe sneaking out. If it starts getting worse, if you have somebody who makes contact, that they're sneaking out, they're running away, they're skipping school, their grades are going down. All those typical signs that you would see in that you might see in drug use, you would see in this type of abuse that that's taking place. All those red flags.
I know there's an incident it's been all over social media with the young man in Long Island, I think it is. It's like 15-year-old just went missing. It's been all over social media. It keeps coming up in my
Yeah.
feed. And that is what it seems like is he was trafficked or groomed by somebody online and he went to meet with them. I mean, right now it's early in the investigation, but it seems as though that's where this case is heading.
And again, you're going to see that uptick. You're going to see it become more common that these deviants will just become more aggressive. But you have to understand about, first of all, anybody who's had any success in doing this, and you know this, is when you have somebody who commits crimes and you catch them, they typically have committed that crime 100 times before.
Oh, yeah.
I like
Yeah.
to put the comparison for the average citizen who's law abiding, compare it to a traffic stop. Think about when you got your first ticket, how long it may have taken. But then be honest with yourself. During the course of the day, how many traffic offenses do I make? Let's say it's 5. Okay, I'm being nice. And then multiply that times 7, and then multiply that times 52 weeks, and then multiply that by the time that how many years it's been since you got a ticket. And theoretically, you've committed tens of thousands of traffic offenses before you ever get caught. With pedophiles, it's the same way. They will sit and do this all day long. With the doctor who was lured was ghosted by one of the detectives here in Port St. Lucie a few months ago, and was working with a fictitious mother to traffic her child. He had dozens of profiles that he was online with. And when you look at the forensics, you say, how in the world was this guy a physician, a pediatrician, which Lord knows what they're going to find out, how many other offenses there were, but how in the world does he have time to do this during the course of the day and have all these conversations? It's because there's a sickness, and that's the advantage that we have from the law enforcement standpoint in catching these people. They're going to repeat their behaviors. So at least you can develop patterns with some of these folks that you can kind of forecast what they're going to do. In this particular case, whether or not the more attention that this case gets, the more desperate that this offender is going to be, the less likelihood that the child will be brought home to safety. That's just statistically what happens, and it's unfortunate unless that child is able to find a way out, or there is an opportunity for someone who sees this taking place and them taking action. And that's one of the big things that we work on, especially with law enforcement and with civilians, is you may only have one shot at saving this child's life, because that child needs to be transported at some point in time. It's whether
Right.
you're having a watchful, trained eye, that you're able to intervene and call 911, follow the vehicle, do whatever you got to do, because that one shot is maybe the only thing they get.
Right. So we talked about what a parent can do for their child or how they can identify a child. But what if you're just a person out and about, say at a restaurant or a supermarket or wherever, just out in public somewhere, and you see something that seems a little suspicious? What are some of the signs that an average civilian might spot that can help, somebody that might be trafficked?
So typically, when you have an abducted child out in public, they have a handler. That handler could be the user. That handler could be the trafficker. That handler could also have what's called a bottom. And that is a person who was formerly trafficked or still may be trafficked, but also has had enough longevity with the handler or the pedophile to where they have grown the trust from that offender that they're able to do kind of the dirty work for them. So they would handle that child. So if you're out in public, you may see, if you're a waitress, someone coming over to a table and you see a very recluse child, a child who's being very quiet, head down, won't make eye contact, won't even order their food, and you have maybe another child who's maybe a little older place the order for them, or that you have a man at a table with three children and doing all the ordering for all the children. The kid in the back seat of the vehicle who might be trying to give you a hand signal when you're pulling up to an intersection, maybe something that simple. There's so much of it out there. There's so many being transported. It's happening amongst us constantly that it'll blow your mind. And it's really the small things. Looking at these kids who the number one thing I know I mentioned it was not being able to make any eye contact whatsoever or doing any communicating on their own. They've already been told you will not look at anybody, you will not make eye contact. You're probably going to see poor hygiene. The biggest thing when you're looking at hygiene is a differentiation between the hygiene of one child compared to other children. So this is one of the things we do train for law enforcement. When you're going into a home for a regular call for service, there might be that one child who's really standing out and looking very differently than the other children in the house. That's the one that is most likely being abused,
Mm.
or may not be from that family. So that's something for you to look for in your neighbors. I mean, we can talk about things for your neighborhood all day long.
Yeah, yeah. So if somebody suspects they are witnessing some child being trafficked, what should they do?
The best thing for you to do if you see anything, obviously vehicle, you got to get a tag number. I mean, because the vehicle description just isn't going to help law enforcement. So if you are able to get a tag number and get the best descriptions that you possibly can, that's great. If you see something that is you can obviously see is flagrant, it's going on right then and there. If you are able to maintain a visual on a vehicle or on a child with an adult who's in a public place and able to call 911, give that information to them so they can get law enforcement out there to intervene. Again, that may be that child's only one chance. If you have, let's say you live in a neighborhood and you've got three kids who live across the street and they're all homeschooled, and you're seeing different cars come in and out of that house every single day, and it just doesn't seem right. Or if you have kids and they're not really friendly with them, you don't see them, those should be red flags to you. The thing to do is to start writing down license plate numbers if you're seeing this, getting your phone out because everybody's happy to do that, start filming this activity taking place. The more basic free information that you can give to law enforcement, the higher the likelihood of them being able to get a prosecution out of it. And so all those different things help. But I would say that making that 911 call as quickly as you can, if it looks suspicious and it doesn't seem right, that's kind of like why God gave us hairs in the back of our neck. When they start raising, you should take action because people are typically not wrong about this. And the bad part is I see a lot of posts on Facebook where people let these things go on and on and on. And then I went
Right,
here and then he followed me there. And it's like, at what point in time were you going to turn around and take action? Or what point in time were you going to quickly take your iPhone and tap it three times your power button and let it automatically call 911 and just talk into it?
mhm,
I watched this happen. I'm like, okay, how long did you were so lucky nothing happened to you. So
right.
that can be very frustrating when you see that take place.
Yeah, then you have the people that just don't wanna get involved.
It's so common in families too. It's going on in a lot of families. So if you have children, grandchildren, nephews, nieces, the more conversations you have with them, the more you start to find out. And it's amazing to me how quickly sometimes you start having a regular conversation with a teenager. They'll just start opening up and telling you, "Oh yeah," because it's become so normal to them.
Right.
It, I mean, crisis has become so normal to children nowadays because they've seen so much of it. They're numb to it. Where you and I
Yeah,
at
they
our age,
are.
we're shocked by it.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, so
Yeah, and
they'll talk about it like it's nothing.
yeah, and, I see, and I'm sure you've seen it as well, but out in public where a child just roaming around the store, no parent whatsoever in sight.
It drives my wife. She does the same thing you do, and it's just like, "What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do?" And I'm like, "Well, let's go try and find the parents,"
Yeah,
and it's pretty common, and it's hard to believe considering it's the number one crime taking place. It's the fast. It is mind blowing, but then being in the active shooter world for as long as I've been in, these are topics people don't want to talk about, and
yep,
they don't want to acknowledge they exist. They'd rather stick their head in the sand, and that's unfortunate because the downside to that is that well minors are getting violated because of this. I mean, it's your own children that we're talking. You're going to have to cowboy up a little bit and take some type of proactive approach to this. Get yourself educated on it because they're being affected by it. And the worst part about it is, well, I could have intervened and I didn't, and now my child's gone, or this is taking place with my child. But once they get violated, that's something they have to carry with them the rest of their lives. And as parents, as long as you're alive, you're going to be dealing with that problem also.
yeah,
whether it be therapy, whether it be them being dysfunctional their entire lives. Once you have that scar, it is first and foremost the rest of your life. Everything else becomes secondary to that.
Yeah, it really is, and a lot of times people just don't think it's ever gonna happen to them or their child. It's never gonna happen until it happens.
Yeah, I know. It's the whenever I do my training, I always have those two quotes over there up there on the board so people can read them. I make them read them out loud, and it's the two fallacies. It's never going to happen here, and it's never going to happen to me. All things that victims said prior to it happening to
Yeah,
them. Every
I know.
single. Do you think in Sandy Hook they ever imagined that they were going to have
Yeah,
their elementary school
yeah,
shot up and have over 20 kids murdered in cold blood? No, Sandy Hook is this tiny little community. So I don't care
exactly.
how tiny your town is. It's all happened in tiny towns. And even then, they don't do what's needed to be done. Listen, my main goal is to save lives, so I really don't care who I offend. You can call me up and complain all you like. I was on the reenactment team and went back into Building 12 at MSD,
Yep.
and we reshot that entire crime scene uh, with the same rifle that Cruz used. The I think I shared with you. I did the full timeline video and acted that the entire thing based on witness statements that took place in court, victims and witnesses, and the people who actually were charged with protecting that school. The amount of failures that took place, the amount of red flags they had leading up to it, it's laughable. How
Yeah.
many different ways it could have been stopped, and it wasn't, even down to the last second. And then also, even not as law enforcement to go in and render aid when these kids are bleeding out. Yeah, the whole thing is so disgusting to me, and the a lot of what came out of it, as far as public information following it, the whole thing disgusts me. That these children were killed. These teachers who were heroes trying to save their lives were killed. Um, and just the way things got politicized was terrible. But you know what? We keep repeating these same mistakes over and over again. Nothing's been done on a national level for us to stop that tragedy. On a national level, for us to stop child trafficking, done what we can as far as protecting the border, but it's become too big for us to do it on a national level. The only way that you can be effective in stopping this is to do it on a local level. It has to start in the home. Same thing that happens with active shooters. It's got to start in the home. It's got to start. You got to start paying attention to the behavior changes. You got to educate your kids. You got to be willing to have a conversation with them, and you need to clover leaf it out within your communities to start making stronger communities. It's the only way that it truly works. There's there's no magic wand that's going to be waved by a president or by Congress that's going to stop this as far as trafficking goes, and even active shooters too. They're not
Right.
the reality of the crystals, they're not willing to take necessary steps that need to be taken to actually make an effect on it. They're not willing to do it. And when it comes to the trafficking side and the deviant side, we've got too many deviant people who are in power that are going to throw the roadblocks up to make these things happen. Sorry, that's just the reality of it. And
Yeah.
if any of the deviants who are elected out there don't like what I have to say, we're fine. Yeah, I mean, there's 10% bad everywhere we go.
Yeah,
That's
I
the
know. Those
reality
are
of it.
those are definitely gonna be, the roadblocks that we face. Very unfortunate. If
Yeah.
you can talk to the parents that are listening right now, if you can tell them 1 or 2 things, what would that be?
Have a conversation with your child earlier than you think you need to. That's the biggest thing I can say. You did we did a training at Reverse the Door. It's a youth camp that for kids whose parents have been incarcerated, and they come from single family homes, very very low income. And I had 6-year-olds in there that knew just as much as I did about what's taking place online at that age. I'm looking at them at 6. I'm saying, well, I guess these kids needed the conversation at 3 and 4
Right.
because it's really is early. A 2-year-old can be handed your phone, and the crazy thing about it is, so a mom hands her child a phone. The algorithms are built into it. If the mother has ever looked at pornography, and let's be honest about it all, pornography is the root of all this evil. It's the reason why people become desensitized to it and how people become addicted to child pornography. Fortunately, the group I work with, Lynn Barletta, was instrumental in getting YouPorn taken out of Pornhub being taken out of the state of Florida. It's not available anymore.
Mhm.
That was done here local through one of our congressmen. So having that conversation with the child early, because if your child picks your phone up and they go on to any of these web searches and they start tapping, the algorithms of the phone know that it's not an adult who's actually making these taps. Start pushing CSAM, which is child sexual abusive materials that are pushed to that child, and they will start to get them to engage. And they have so many different ways of getting a 2 and 3-year-old engaged. I know it's disgusting and it's scary, but it's true. And they'll start getting that visual stimulation out of them because it's different. So you got to have the conversation with them very, very young, and you need to make sure that they understand these things, that it's okay to come and talk to you if it does happen to them. And you want to watch their gaming. That's where it all starts. Roblox is the hot one now, and they'll shift because Fortnite was the real hot one at the beginning, where the predators would go, and then Fortnite got so much attention, they just shift. I mean, they just shift to somewhere else. And now Fortnite's starting to increase again. The popularity of Fortnite's starting to increase. More of the predators are on there trying to find these kids. So you want to watch that gaming activity. And it's always nice to know, say, hey, I see you're playing Fortnite with 3 other friends. Who are they? Well, it's Joe who's out in Arizona. Well, be careful with Joe, because if it's people who you know in the neighborhood, that's one thing. But if it's strangers and they say, "Oh, friend," it's define friend for me, and have them define who that friend is. The last thing I'd say is, since the domestic stuff is really on an uptick, exactly the example that you brought up of, why are you letting your kid wander around? I don't care if it's a resort. You're 100% right. Resorts are where, the majority of the stuff takes place. When there's a Super Bowl, guess where all the pedophiles are going, and
Yeah.
all the trafficking handlers are going? They're going to sell their girls there. People are going to look for people to take to sell them. Human body is a lot more monetary valuable than drugs, because I can sell drugs once, but I can sell. So those are the things you got to look for. You have to be willing to engage your children at a very, very young age. And unfortunately, yeah, it's not the birds and the bees anymore that we're worried about. And we're way past that. You got to have the real conversation with them. And it's okay to go on and find the materials online that show exactly how grooming works. Show it to your child.
Mhm.
They'll get you this way, and let them see it's okay. If this happens to you, just come let me know. You're not going to be in any trouble whatsoever. Let them know that. I
Right.
can't think of anything better to do for your children than that.
What are some resources that you have available that we can share with our listeners so they can access more information?
Well, interestingly enough, if you come to our website, u-act.org,
Mhm.
there's a lot of resources on there. Anything through Homeland Security, they've got a full portal there through HSI that you can go through the government on any of those websites. FBI does. They have different portals for you to go to. I'll be honest with you, to get the real information, it's good to watch podcasts like this,
Right.
to engage in these podcasts, to go into Netflix, look for anything that's related to human trafficking or 764. Get educated on real cases, because having the resources, things are great, but when you hear from how it happened to real people who you can relate to, it's far more impactful. And it scares you a hell of a lot more, which people need. They need to be scared
Yeah.
about this and worried enough that they take action. We are developing our app right now. Our app is going to be a portal to where you're going to be able to go on as a parent and get constant information. We want to update you every week, every 2 weeks, law enforcement, every month, on the latest trends, the latest threats, and what to look for, because you can't get enough info on this. We're behind the
Right.
curve.
You just mentioned would like to enlighten us and let us know what exactly 764 is?
So 764 was a cult that was started in Texas years ago by a minor who is currently in prison right now. The number 764 represent the first 3 numbers of the zip code that he lives in. And the cult itself is a group of minors, and this is what makes it very, very difficult. These are not influenced children. These are minors, and it is a satanic cult. They believe in satanic worshiping, and the deviance that takes place there is something I've never seen in over 30 years of being in law enforcement and threat mitigation. So they'll work as groups to take individuals, pull them in, and they actually have point systems. They have monetary compensation based on what horrific things you can cause another minor to do. So there's a story that's actually on Netflix. It's actually hard to watch, but very good story. It tells the truth about just an innocent 13-year-old young girl who was on Etsy, and she made crafts, and another who she thought was another girl befriended her and pulled her in and started telling her how awesome she thought that her crafts were, and building her esteem up, and said, I want you to meet some other friends. And so she gets in, and this girl doesn't have any physical friends at school. This is what her hobby is. And they start building her up, telling her she's beautiful, and now she's got multiple friends, and this is basically it. She's been brought into a cult, she has no idea, and they're making her feel so good about herself that her life changes. And then all of a sudden they turn on her, and they make her start doing these horrible, horrible things to herself. And they're enticing her to do these things, cut her hair and eat it, all the way down to, bringing herself into a field and lighting herself on fire and killing herself.
That's so
And they're able to
tragic.
manipulate. It's horrible, and it's heartbreaking to watch these parents that went through this. They had no idea. I mean, the kid's making crafts, for heaven's sakes. So they'll do these things. They'll pay these kids in Robux, just something you can use on Roblox to build your games out. And they'll have a point system. I got 2 kids to kill themselves. I got 2 kids to cut their hair. I'm a platinum member, and it's growing. So 764 was the actual initial group, and now it's splintered off into all these different dark web groups, and they're just kind of growing exponentially. So it's not stopping. The scary part about all this is, and I said the same thing in active shooter world. We used to have the lone wolf who was out there and doing these things, who was giving signs, who was giving leakage of what their intentions were, doing it for attention. There has been a massive shift in the deviants. These are kids who are working together to try and harm other children. I remember one day I was watching one of the specials on it because I needed to have some material for one of my classes, and I remember just telling my wife, "You know what? I almost give up.
Yeah.
This is worse than I ever thought it would ever get. I didn't even know where to begin on how to tackle this. I don't know where to start. Trying to protect them. They're the ones who are doing this on their own. They're not even being really manipulated by anybody. They've decided to do this on their own. It is terrifying to think about. Yeah. So 764 is something that the best interview I would say for someone to watch is get on the Sean Ryan show and watch his interview with Ryan Montgomery. I think that's the best one that's out there. It's on YouTube. It's free. I can sit here and talk about this all day long. Ryan does it from a perspective of first of all, he's younger than us, but he's
Yeah.
the most tech savvy person that there is out there. So he's been called the most, they call him, he's a hacker, but he's
It's okay. We'll look it up.
totally escapes me. No, sorry. He's been framed the most ethical hacker in the world.
Oh,
So his
nice.
ability, yeah, he's an ethical hacker. So he's able to figure out, and then he goes and he hacks these pedophiles, and he gets into their networks. Any of these kids who are being sextorted, he goes on and pretends he's a child to get sextorted, so he can hit them back. It's hysterical to watch him do it. He's even done some of those videos of getting pedophiles to meet and following them around stores, things like that.
Yeah, I watched some of those
Which I'm not,
episodes as well.
yeah, I'm not really scared of that because a lot of times, that can backfire on you, and you can actually ruin a case by doing that. So, my advice is if you ever do get that far, call 911 and get law enforcement involved so they can take it over from there.
Right. Alrighty. Well, I do appreciate you coming on the show. If somebody get involved and get trained, how can they reach you?
The best way to reach me is through u-act.org. My
Okay.
profile's on there. We have a contact page on there. That's the best way to get to me. And we have somebody who's monitoring the page 24 hours a day. We are right now working here in the 19th Judicial to get all of our law enforcement agencies trained up. Once we move from here, we're going to go national with this program. It is an in-service training program. It's 90 minutes, and then we are giving monthly intel updates from assets throughout the country, actually internationally. We got some people overseas who are helping us with some trends, and we're pushing that information as quickly as we can because these guys need to be prepared. They're the ones who are making the contact with citizens. And then we do have our task forces, Better Citizen Task Forces also. But UAC.org is the best way for us to reach us and to get information.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much again, and I'll be touching base with you soon and meeting some of the people down here in my county.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I look forward to working with you. I know that you're looking to come on the team, and
Yeah.
we welcome you. It's going to be great having you down there working with Lisa. We just become force multipliers. It's the best we can
Yeah,
do.
we are. We got to do it though. If it's just one child, even, we save somebody. But I know there'll be more. Take a team to keep fighting this great fight.
Absolutely.